Okay, today I'm going to be starting our garden tour video for August. I'm actually doing this on August 10th because our average frost date is September 10th, which means we have about a month of growing season left. And right now, what we seem to be growing the most is kittens. This one is not a kitten, she is a very old cat. Here we have our red curry or little gem squash. These are something that we grew last year. We had one out of it because of the drought. And so this year we have quite a few more. They're growing very quickly and I'm quite happy with how these are turning out. This has been a good spot for them. This is our King Tut purple peas, which to my amazement is still blooming, still producing pods. And we actually have a purple one. Before they were only producing green pods. And we also have along here our chocolate cherry tomatoes, which are growing quite nicely against the fence here. But some of them don't even have flowers yet for some reason. But they are looking pretty strong and healthy over here. Next to the chocolate cherry tomatoes, we have there's shallots at this end, and then we have two types of carrots. And unfortunately, most of the shallots just didn't make it over here. This area got flooded quite badly, and it was just too much for the shallots. Most of them rotted away. Weeding has not been really possible in this bed. There's even a little lettuce that somehow managed to seed itself. But we still have a few onions as well. This is where we have our Haskap berries. They're completely engulfed in these flowers. The flowers are, some of them are as tall as I am. Okay, I'm not very tall, but I've never seen them get this high before since we've moved here. They really like the wet of this spring, but somewhere in there we go. There's one Haskap hiding in there. In this bed, we have the garlic that we planted in the fall that seemed to have frozen in this because of our very long late spring. So they're about a month behind in their development. And just at the very end here, these are the last survivors of what had been planted in this bed, which has the yellow pear tomatoes, and those seem to be doing just fine. You check out here. They're looking pretty good. Very strong and healthy plants. And then we have the red onions that were from sets planted underneath them. They're not doing as well as in other locations, but we'll have lots of onions altogether. And then on the other side here, we have our purple corn. This is the coulis corn. We had to rearrange the mesh because they were just getting too tall and the mesh was blocking their height. There are no tassels or anything like that developing yet. Down at the bottom, we have yellow bush beans, and we've been getting beans from here every couple of days and getting a pretty decent haul on here. They're growing very vigorously under here. It seems to be a good partnership. On this side, next to the purple corn, is the Aunt Molly's ground cherries, and they are doing absolutely fabulous in this location. I'm actually very surprised considering how incredibly wet it got. But if you take a closer look, you can see there are quite a lot of berries forming, and they are still blooming as well. So we should have a good haul from here. We've actually had a few that we've been able to taste too. I'm very happy with these. This is our sour cherry tree that's next to the house. I've actually picked as many of the lower ones that I could reach that were ripe. that I could reach without a ladder. So these higher ones, I need a second person to hold the ladder steady so we can reach them. These are the most cherries I've seen since we've moved here. So it's done very well this year. But only this tree that's beside the house. There are others in behind there, and we didn't even see them blooming this year. Maybe they did for a little while, but yeah, the cherries aren't doing anything at all in there. These ones are doing quite well. The horseradish over here, which predates us, is doing really well this year. This whole area needs to be cleaned out, especially with the creeping bellflower and the spirea taking over again. But down here, the wonderberry is actually blooming again. Got these little bitty flowers. So we should get more berries later on. Here are our crabapple trees. Last year we had no crab apples at all. This one tree in particular doesn't have very good apples. And this one I think we're going to have to get rid of. It's getting pretty diseased. But, oh, and this one it's actually dead. There's only the suckers left on the bottom. This tree, however, does produce tasty apples. And we made an excellent hard apple cider out of them last year. Not last year, the year before. We let it ferment for a year and actually got to taste it. We have a little one over here that doesn't produce particularly good apples. And this one is mostly dead. The original is dead. There's just the suckers that are still alive on this one. But we shall see what we get. We might have a decent apple crop this year. Hey, here are our sea buckthorn, which some are doing all right. This one started to bud and then just stopped. And then you get to this one over here that just something broke it one day. But it is trying to send up some new leaves. And then we have our silver buffalo berry and our one remaining high bush cranberry. And it doesn't look, oh! There are new leaves. This is the one that got chomped by a deer. It's managing. Eventually all this cardboard is going to be covered with wood chips. The pea trellis is a bit of a surprise for me. They're still blooming, still producing pods, even though, especially on this side, a deer came along and just chomped off all the tops. So they're stunted, obviously, but they're still blooming, still trying to grow, except for over here. At this end, there must be something different about the soil, because even last year, they did not grow well on this side. But we are, amazingly, still getting peas. This is the first planting of peas. While on this side, we've got our cucumbers over here. And just training them to grow up the netting instead of out. And we've got the occasional cucumber ready to pick every now and then. They're still growing. A few of them didn't make it, but we have a fair number. While on this side, we have the second planting of peas, which are doing much better. Oh, this pod is ready to pick. And the plants themselves are taller, stronger, producing more pods, blooming more. So this has just been a better spot for it altogether. And then towards the end here, we have a gourd. And unfortunately, I still am not sure what kind of gourd it is because the label got worn off. But it seems to be surviving and growing. On this side, we have our Carmenat purple peas, which are, they could really use a much taller trellis. But they are developing these beautiful, super long beans. Those are just tiny ones. Here's some longer ones. Should be able to start picking some soon. And I'm kind of happy with how big they're getting. Like everything else, they're behind, but at least we're going to have something out of it. Look at the length of those. Loving it. On this side, we have a pole bean called Seychelles. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And I had thought that they were behind on how they were growing, only to discover while trying to weed under here that there are all kinds of much larger beans down on the bottom. So we actually had a crop of beans yesterday. So I expect to pick some more tomorrow. And the sunflowers that the birds seeded for us make some pretty good climbing trellises for the bees. The beans! So we have these beans over here. The Carmenat are kind of growing over the other side and they're getting all mixed up. It should be fine. In here we have our Styrian hulless pumpkins. They finally got a good thick mulch and are doing much better for it. It might be a little too late, but we do have some pumpkins trying to develop in here. And hopefully they will have enough of a growing season to produce something. But we shall see. I think these would have done absolutely fabulous on a climbing trellis because they do like to grasp things. This beautiful flower is a canteen gourd, which the two of them are getting. This is the taller of the two of them. Seeing flowers, not. Oh, is that a female flower? No. Seeing male flowers, not seeing female flowers. Considering how late we are in the season, we probably won't get anything out of these. Over here, these are the red noodle beans, which are just starting to get to the vining stage. And they're still not climbing the trellis, not blooming. I expected these to be farther along. But over here, we have the Tennessee dancing gourds. You see just a little baby one down there. And they're doing quite nicely. When we had these last year, they didn't seem to be doing well. I mean, obviously with the drought, they didn't do very well as far as the plant's robustness was. However, once they started producing gourds, there were just so many of them. So far right now, we have one big one that has developed. And there are lots of little ones. So it's just starting to kick in now. On this side, we have the peas for shelling. So these are meant to be just to dry. They're climbing the trellis, but they're so small and delicate. I did not expect them to be this fragile looking. But we do have beans developing, and they're blooming nicely. So things seem to be coming along. We'll just let them be and see what we get out of it. And here we have our second canteen gourd doing its best to survive. We finally managed to finish mulching this bed. The paths in between still need to be mulched and the corn needs to be done better, but all the squash in here finally got a good mulching, and so they're doing much better for it. Over here we have the Lady Godiva hulless pumpkins, and hopefully they will do all right and we'll actually have something with the corn. This is the Latte bicolor sweet corn, and one has actually started to show tassels. There are green beans planted among them. Oh, I see some flowers starting. This needs a serious weeding job. And you can see over here where the corn is the smallest. This is where there was the most water this spring because this bed got quite flooded. In the middle there are the Boston Marrow. They're very small. They're doing better with the mulch, but I don't expect them to have any time to produce their squash. In here we have the Tom Thumb popcorn, and I need to do something about that grass, but they're not doing very well either. I don't expect to get anything. However, over here, these have really bounced back once they got well mulched. And these are the G-Star Patty Pan squash, a green type of patty pan. They only need 55 days to maturity, so there is some possibility we will actually have green patty pan squash this year. In this area we have our purple variety of potatoes, and as you can see they're struggling. This bed should be absolutely covered in green, and the plants are much smaller than they should be. Again, they just had too much water in the spring, and some didn't even sprout, especially in the other bed over there, which is a variety with yellow skin and white flesh, and a lot of them just didn't make it. Speaking of not making it, here's our one Zucca melon that's trying to grow. The rest are just spindly. None of the melons are doing well at all. It's just been awful for them. These 3 rows are cantaloupe type melons, and they're just so spindly. On this side, it's even worse. Over here, these are supposed to be much bigger, as you can tell, and over here we have watermelon, and they're just gone. I think the grasshoppers ate them, whatever was left of them. And there's the poor sad potatoes over there. In this bed we have the Tropina lunga onions, which are actually doing pretty well. We've had to give them haircuts a couple of times now, and I did actually pull one to try, and it seems to be quite nice of an onion. After we pulled the spinach, I tried planting chard, which isn't doing too well. It looks like it's being eaten. So I'm not going to be planting anything else in here for now, just because there are better places to put it. I think that they're more likely to survive. On this half of the bed, just yesterday I harvested the garlic that was growing here. They were quite nice, and we'll take a look at them later. This bed is going to be prepped, and I will probably be planting spinach in here. And over here we have red of Florence onions surrounding little finger eggplant. And take a good look at the size of the eggplant, because we'll have a comparison to show you in just a little bit. There was spinach planted around here, and the spinach it did not do anything. It barely germinated. In this bed we have more red of Florence onions, and got a couple of Moldova tomatoes, and then we have purple bell peppers. I don't think we're going to get bell peppers, but who knows? Depends on how mild our fall turns out to be. In this bed we had spinach planted around one side between the onions and the peppers, and turnips planted on the other side, and they just didn't happen. But we do have a couple of decent size sunflowers that the birds conveniently planted for us. In this bed we have the yellow onions planted from sets surrounding at this and the black nebula carrots, which are still very spindly and small and not at all pickable. And then we get into the Uzbek golden carrots over here, which are also very small and not doing very much. There's an empty space where there was gold ball turnip, but over here, kind of hard to see, but we actually have turnips visible. So we will have some turnips this year at least. Something to try and see if we like. This is our third variety of potatoes that we planted. it's like the others, not doing very well. And then we have what is supposed to be a short season variety of sweet potatoes. Again, not doing very well. And you can see why these grow bags were on clearance. They're not doing too good. And then we have these little finger eggplants, which are so much bigger than the other ones. And they're actually starting to show the beginnings of fruiting. I'm kind of guessing that part of the reason they're doing so well here is the black bag that they're in is holding in more heat. That's just a guess on my part. But whether or not we have enough growing season left for them, we still don't know. In this bed, we have the Sophie's Choice tomatoes. These are the short ones with the round tomatoes. And Cup of Moldova, which are a paste tomato. They are doing quite well in here. I'm almost surprised by that. These were the ones that were started indoors 10 weeks before our last frost date, and that made a huge difference. We should be able to start harvesting and preserving them soon. We've picked one so far, and then we have, look at this guy. Look at this one. I could probably pick this one right now. But they're managing, and they're managing well, and I'm kind of happy to see what we have here. This bed here is all summer squash, and in this half are the Sunburst Patty Pan squash, a yellow variety, which you can see some are being produced over there. They're well behind, as is everything else, but being a shorter season squash, we should have some over the next few weeks. Last year, we did not successfully have any yellow zucchini. This is a variety called Goldie, and we are actually going to have some this year, which is kind of nice. Over here is a Cup of Moldova tomato. I actually pruned this off of one of the others. It was a large, strong branch that I pruned off, so I stuck it in the ground, and now it's blooming. So we'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, on this side, we have Magda squash. These ones have been doing the best so far. We've picked a few of them, and I'm very happy with that because the last couple of years that we had them, we only had 1 or 2 plants, and they did not produce very well. And this time, all the plants that we started indoors are doing well, relatively speaking. In our large squash patch, we finally got all of the plants mulched with both cardboard and with grass and hay and whatnot. I had to use a scythe to get some of it. It's been such a bad year for mowing. We have hay instead of grass. At this end, we have 4 green zucchini, and we still have not had any that we could pick. They're trying. They're trying. These are Crespo squash. These should be huge right now. They're finally starting to bloom. There's no season left. They're supposed to be a very large type of squash. And then here we have the Kakai hull-less pumpkins, which are doing much better with the mulching. And we actually do have, lo and behold, at least one that we're going to get. In this section, we have some baby Pam pumpkins. They are a very small variety. And if you take a look over here, they don't get too much bigger than this, and so we do actually have some growing. We've got one little one that's starting to turn color here already. So we'll have something. We also have over here the apple gourds. Of the 4 plants, one seems to have just disappeared. But we might actually get some gourds out of it. I'm not sure. Let's take a look here. Got some trying to grow. We'll see how that works out. And for the rest of this patch, we have some Georgia Candy Roaster, which I think only 2 have survived. That's a winter squash. Then we have a tiny variety of winter squash called Teddy. They have a short season compared to the others, so there is a possibility we'll actually get some. And then we have something called Winter Sweet. I don't expect to get any of those. There's just not enough season left. Here we have our giant pumpkin. We have one nice giant pumpkin developing. Like everything else, this is actually smaller than it should be for this time of year. But while this is small for a giant pumpkin, this is what this entire patch should be like as far as how big the plants are. Unfortunately, we've had problems with ants directly under the roots, so it's a little setback, but it does look like we have a couple more pumpkins that could be developing, including from this plant over here that not only has the anthill under its roots, but also had a broken stem this spring. It managed to survive. And look at the size of those flowers. They're huge. I'm really happy with how this is turning out. This is the garlic that I harvested yesterday, hanging up to cure. And these are much larger than they were last year. I'm quite happy with that. Even though there are fewer of them, we will get more cloves out of them. And as you can see by this one, it could have been harvested a little bit earlier. But that's okay. I plan to keep the largest ones and see about planting more this fall for next year. Hopefully that will work out well. Here we are into the old kitchen garden. From this side, this corner is basically given over to whatever was growing here before we moved in. I've pulled up the creeping bellflower as much as I can. Obviously I missed some. But here we have the white Cherokee rose. And you can see some rose hips developing. And we have a honeysuckle over there. And I managed to uncover these flowers, but they're not blooming. They were completely hidden away by other flowers. The asparagus that is has been growing here since before my parents bought this place in the mid-60s. Here we have a single green bush bean. It was a seed that was caught behind in the packet when my daughter planted them next to the latte corn. I stuck it in here, and now it's the only one that's growing. All the others did not germinate because of the flooding. I got some mint in here. The extra onion sets that we stuck into here have been rolled over by cats. Looks like a skunk was digging. The Red Baron bunching onions did not do well here at all. This area had way too much shade. We did cut away the biggest branches that were causing that shade, but it was too little too late. And got mint planted in between. And this is the creeping bellflower that is causing so much trouble all over the place. And I did actually harvest a shallot out of here before it rotted away completely. So I had one shallot. Now over here, let me just step through here. Cleared off the lettuce at this end, and we now have Bloomsdale variety of spinach planted in here as of last night. And these are starting to get bitter. We've just been grabbing... Oh, I'm being watched. Hello, kitty. Just grabbing leaves as we wanted them, rather than harvesting entire plants. They're getting bitter now. I am going to leave some to go to seed, but the rest is going to be pulled up and be planting spinach or Swiss chard in here. Things that can grow within the time we have left and that can handle frost. And we've got just the leftover seeds were thrown in here. I took the netting off of these. They were to protect from the groundhogs, but the groundhogs seem to have moved on. And so we just took the netting off because kittens were getting under it and getting hung up and caught and getting very panicky. This is a double lilac right over here. And these are ornamental crab apples. They just make the tiniest apples that the grosbeaks like to eat. So yeah, I'll be leaving some of these to go to seed, and the rest I'll be pulling up and we'll plant something else. And here we have our beets. They are not doing well. Last year we had a lot better, even with the drought. Part of the problem is this corner in particular has been just invaded by the mint. And it is out of control. And here, these flowers, you can see they're going to seed. I'm considering pulling these up once the seed heads are drying and just scattering them in other areas where we don't want, where it's difficult to mow, and just to fill in with wildflowers for the pollinators. And, okay, this pink rose bush actually had lots of roses this year. That was the first. And here are our breadseed poppies, which, well, it's kind of touch and go. The pods should be much, much larger than this, but, well, we'll see. And here's the one Egyptian walking onion that predates us, and it is going to spread if I leave it like that. And we've got some self-sown dill in here as well. And then we have the chives and the rhubarb. We could probably get one more harvest of rhubarb out of this. Okay, here we have grapes. These were, oh my goodness, would you look at this? It's so tiny and adorable. Hello, beautiful. So we uncovered these from the spirea, and this is probably the most lush growth we've seen on it. And we do have grapes trying to develop in here. Just, there we go. You can see that. Little clusters all over the place. It's not going to be a lot, but we will have something. And this is water for the cats and a tray to hold food for the cats. The ones that are too shy to come close to the house. Most of them are semi-feral, but also some are completely feral. So, hey, where'd he go? The froggy went away. And finally, we have our single self-seeded purple fingerling potato from last year. It somehow managed to survive, and we're just letting it go. This is where the white strawberries were supposed to be. And this one came up. I'm not even sure if it's strawberry. It doesn't... We have a weed here that looks a lot like strawberries, and I think that might be it. Unfortunately, this vine is taking over and shading everything. But this is the one place we're allowing the vine to grow. Everywhere else we're pulling it up because it's killing things. And there's our potato.